तशरीफ रखो. Okay, you're Rida Zahra. That is a unique name. Let's start with you telling the panel the meaning of your name.
Sir, Rida means dupatta or chadar, something you cover yourself with, and Zahra is Hazrat Fatma to Zahra. So my name in entirety means Hazrat Fatma to Zahra ki chadar.
MashaAllah. It's a beautiful name. And according to your CV form, you are the first lady to have qualified the CSS from your area.
Yes.
You deserve congratulations. That, I think, is a big achievement. All right, shall we start formally?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us something about the NFC award and how do you relate it to the 18th Amendment passed in May 2010?
Yes, sir. Sir, the National Financial Commission Award, so far, 7 of these awards have been passed since 1947, and these awards are basically it divides the shares of provinces in the federal divisible pool. Now it has changed significantly after the 18th Amendment because more financial share has been given to the provinces after the 18th Amendment. After the 18th Amendment, initially the criteria was just population, and on that basis the shares were divided in the provinces. But after the 18th Amendment, the criterion has been changed to inverse population density as well as poverty, which has increased the share of other provinces such as Balochistan and NWFP. For example, sir, the share of Balochistan in the current NFC, the 7th NFC award, has been increased to 9%, which was previously far less.
Okay, thank you. In June 1984, the Indira Gandhi government in India launched an operation against the Sikhs in Amritsar, and scores of Sikhs worshippers in the Golden Temple were massacred. What was that operation? Can you fill us with some details on it?
Yes, sir. Sir, its code name was Operation Blue Star, and it was a military operation conducted in the Punjab state of India. In it, thousands of Sikhs were massacred mercilessly without any warning in the temple while they were praying. The hindsight of this operation was that one of the Khalistani leader, Jarnail Singh, was they were trying to arrest him, and in the process, millions were killed in the way. In the Operation Blue Star, they came to Punjab, and a military operation was conducted, and there was a lot of civil servants, 6 civil servants, as well as several Sikhs in the military resigned after the operation, and a lot of the people returned their civil and military awards as a protest to the Operation Blue Star. Another very
Okay, let me ask you a related question. What is the Khalistan movement?
Sir, Khalistan movement is a movement for separation of Sikhs from India to have their own autonomous region in which they can practice their faith in autonomy and separately and freely. And this was recently seen as well in the farmers' protest as well, where the needs and wants of the farmers of the Punjab was not was not given a favor, or was not considered by the Indian government, where they came to the streets and came to Delhi, and they were also very brutally attacked by the police in Delhi as well. So that is also an extension of the Khalistan movement, where the Sikhs of India are being marginalized in India.
Suppose the Khalistan, hypothetically speaking, the Khalistan movement succeeds. Which is the area that will become an independent Sikh state?
Sir, if I'm correct, I think it has to be the Punjab state, which is close to the Lahore, across the border. Sorry, sir, I cannot recall the name of the city right now.
Never mind. Okay, let's move on and come to your optional subjects, because each one of us is going to ask you 4 or 5 questions, right? You have studied international relations. Can you tell us what was the Balfour Declaration?
Yes, sir. Sir, the Balfour Declaration was a declaration which was given by the Britain government in 1917, in which it was unilaterally declared that the Jewish people will have a separate homeland in Palestine, which was then a part of the Ottoman Empire, and in which Jewish people were in minority at the time, but it was unilaterally decided that in it will be a separate homeland for the Jewish people, which created this conflict which is still killing thousands of people in the Palestinian area as well. That was basically originated from the Balfour Declaration.
Okay. You have studied gender studies also. Who is Malala Yousafzai? I need a succinct answer.
Sir, Malala Yousafzai was a girl who was brutally shot, and her only crime was that she was speaking in favor of girls and their education in her hometown, Sawat. She used to write a blog in the BBC in which she talked about women and how important is their education. She was shot in the face by the Taliban, and since then she has been advocating women education on international forums and elsewhere.
Good. Okay, last question from my side relating to US history. What is the Monroe Doctrine?
Yes, sir. So Monroe Doctrine was given by James Monroe, and it is called a foreign model policy, model foreign policy. A lot of US presidents have used it over time. So it has three main points. So it was given in the early 1900s, in which the USA was just getting established. So in the Monroe Doctrine, the first point was that European powers will not colonize the New World. The second point was that US will not intervene in European quarrels unless countries' rights were endangered. And third, that Europe will not intervene in independent states in the Americas or the New World. So this Monroe Doctrine was later also used by Roosevelt for Panama Canal, as well as used by I'm sorry, sir, there was a president, I cannot recall his name, he used it to block Cuba, Russia and Cuba. I'm sorry, sir.
Okay, never mind. Thank you. Over to you.
I was just going through your biodata. You have placed Foreign Service at number 2.
Yes.
Suppose you are selected in Foreign Service. And what measures would you highlight to attract the tourists?
Sir, firstly, it is essential that for tourists we need to create a safe environment where they feel welcomed. And in that capacity, what needs to be done is we need to regulate our tourism sector. Whether it is a transport system, whether it is the hotels, it needs to be regulated and it needs to be licensed so the tourists know what to expect and they are answerable to the people or the government. Currently, there is a lot of uncertainty when it comes to tourism because there aren't a lot of reliable tourist organizations. The second is the ease in the visa process. So just like Gilgit-Baltistan, you need a separate entry permit to enter in Gilgit-Baltistan. That can create hassle for some tourists, and therefore it need to be a one-window visa system where it is easier for the tourists to just come in and they do not have to go through a lengthy process.
Okay. You have studied international relations. Tell us something about the Treaty of Versailles.
Yes. So the Treaty of Versailles was, it was in 1919, and it is a very important treaty because it was between Germany and the Allied forces, and it ended the World War I. But it is also a treaty of importance because it is said to be an instigator for World War II as well, because there were a lot of conditions that were very humiliating for Germany, as it is said, such as the wall guilt was entirely put on Germany. Germany was made to pay reparations to other countries, as well as it was forced to return a lot of land to France, Sweden and other countries. And it is said that Hitler used these terms to instigate a sense of nationalism that further led to World War II.
Where this treaty was signed?
So it was signed in Versailles. It's a city in France, close to Paris.
Okay. Can you tell us something about strain theory?
Yes, sir. Sir, Excuse me. Sir, string theory was given by Robert K. Merton. It's a theory in criminology that states that every person has certain aspirations, every person has certain goals in life. And when they can't achieve that through legitimate means, they often resort to illegitimate ways to achieve those goals. And in it, Robert K. Merton gave 5 different scenarios. So he said that if a person is accepting both the goals and the ways of achieving those goals, then he is conforming to the standards. And if he is rejecting both the goals and ways, then he is doing rebellion. There are 3 other instances as well, such as innovation, ritualism, and retreatism.
Okay. Pakistan is facing major problem, that is higher growth rate of population. And as a result, all the development is being eroded by that higher development. China has managed to curtail or control this higher growth rate of population. What was that? Can you explain about it?
Yes, sir. China adopted a one-child policy in which they were incentivizing the parents who decide to only have one child. And due to these incentives and due to the awareness that was created by the government in China, people started opting and people started getting more and more aware. And they started having lesser kids, and I think that is what is lacking in Pakistan as well. The first step is the lack of awareness in Pakistan, specifically in the rural settings where people do not realize and recognize the need, how it is going to strain their resources, and there also is a need to address the religious views of people which are distorted in a way that that needs to be addressed as well.
Okay, you have also studied American history. Tell us something about purchase of Louisiana.
Yes, sir. Sir, the Louisiana Purchase was done in 1803 by Thomas Jefferson, and it was done. It doubled the size of United States of America from the original 13 colonies. It was done for 15 million from France, who at that time was being controlled by Napoleon after he became the first consul in 1799. Thomas Jefferson made this purchase because he believed in the power of yeoman farmers, and he said that it is important that every person in the United States needs to have a land to become self-sufficient.
Any other area which America purchased? Can you tell us something about that?
Yes, sir. Sir, Alaska was also purchased from Russia. If I'm not wrong, sir, if you will allow me to take a guess, I think it was for 15 million. I'm sorry.
Okay. United Nations General Assembly. Any Pakistani has been the president of that assembly?
Yes, sir. Our first foreign minister, Chaudhry Zafrullah, was not only the president of United Nations General Assembly, but also was the president of the International Court of Justice. So from 61 to 62, he was the president of United Nations General Assembly, and from 71 to 73, he was the president of International Court of Justice.
Okay, just one last question. What's the difference between direct and indirect taxes?
Yes. Sir, direct taxes are which are paid by the people directly to the government, such as an income tax or an agriculture tax. However, indirect taxes are the ones that are transferable. For example, the GST or the custom tax, where you are paying to another party who then further pay to the government.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let me start from the history of Indo-Pak. My first question to you is that how important do you think is Mughal king Aurangzeb in the history of India and Pakistan?
Yes, sir. Mughal king Aurangzeb Alamgir is of utmost importance because he was different from the first 5 emperors in a way that he lived a life of piety and simplicity as opposed to the previous one. Another thing that is important about Aurangzeb Alamgir is he was the last of the great Mughal emperors. After his demise, the Mughal empire fell into a decay. He also issued a fatwa-e-Alamgiri, which were codes in which he established a Sharia law across. He was also responsible for extending the Islam in the subcontinent further in his rule.
For how long did he rule?
Sir, would you allow me to take a guess? Sir, 30 years perhaps?
49 years. He was the longest serving Mughal emperor.
All right. In our neighborhood, maybe after the Biden becomes the president of USA, there are likelihoods that there's a change in Afghan policy. What do you think? What kind of change we can expect by Biden coming into power in the United States of America?
Yes, sir. So there's one change that is very obvious is the change from Republicans to Democrats. So they both have their own set of policies that they take with their parties. In spite of that, sir, Republicans have a more isolationist policy where Trump gave the idea of America first, and he was more concerned with what was happening inside his country instead of.
With particular reference to Afghanistan.
Yes, sir. So in terms of Afghanistan, Trump was going for a very hasty withdrawal in Afghanistan, and he was pulling out forces without even looking at how Afghanistan is coping with all of that. So now, at this point, nearly 3,000 forces are left, and there are a lot of reservations about that. So when Joe Biden came in power, he initially started renegotiating the terms with Afghanistan as well, and he wants to bring the Afghan government on board as well, which were initially being excluded. But irrespective of that, sir, I believe that there is always going to be a threat of warlords emerging and a power vacuum unless this is a thing which is done in a very phased and very peaceful way with all parties, not just the Taliban, but the factions within the Taliban, as well as the government and other neighboring countries on board. Because right now Joe Biden has given the September deadline, but 4 months is not enough time to bring all the factions that are living inside Afghanistan on board, and it can hamper the peace in the region, not just the country.
Rida, on one hand, we follow and toe the policies of United States of America as far as our foreign policy is concerned. At the same time, we have a CPAC arrangement with China, who is our neighbor also. And then we are inclined towards Russia also. What do you think? How can we create a balance between the three with this approach?
Yes, sir. So Pakistan, since its inception, it is quite unfortunate, but we have always had a very hyphenated foreign policy. We have always been inclined toward USA and never really seen the countries in our neighborhood which we had great potential with. So quite recently, in the last 2 decades, Pakistan has started aligning itself to some extent with China and has started prioritizing geoeconomics over geostrategy. So the CPEC, flagship project of BRI, is providing a lot of opportunities for Pakistan as well. However, Pakistan being a country is stuck between two elephants, as I would say. It is said that if 2 elephants fight, the grass under it gets crushed. So we are kind of stuck in the middle. However, it is important that we do not align ourselves with either of the two countries. It is important that we keep a healthy balance by working with United States on, for example, Afghan peace deal is a great opportunity for us to rise to the occasion and work with the US government for a peaceful and phased withdrawal, and side by side work with the China government for a very good trade deals in terms of CPEC as well, and maybe give access to Russia for warm waters, which it really requires for its trade.
All right, 2 crisp questions. One, that on which river we have this Mangala Dam?
Sir, I believe it's River Jhelum.
All right. And who was the president of Pakistan during India-Pakistan War of 1965?
Sir, that was President Ayub Khan.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Achha, thank you. Right, Rida, a couple of questions from your CV. You have stated that your hometown is Bhalwal.
Sir, I am born in Bhalwal. My hometown is Nurpur Thal.
Is
My hometown is Nurpur Thal. I was born in Bhalwal.
Achha, what about Khushab? You've also mentioned Khushab.
Sir, my hometown is Tehsil Nurpur Thal, district Khushab.
Khushab. Anything special? What is the speciality of Khushab?
Sir, there is a sweet that is very famous for Khushab. That is.
What is it known as in common terminology, common language?
It's called Dhodha, sir. And
Yes.
It's very famous. It's a sweet.
Right. You've also mentioned that because of your father's posting, you were moving from town to town and you had a flavor of different schools. Did it benefit you, or did your education suffer on that account?
Sir, looking back now, I believe that it was one of the best things that happened to me because shifting schools every year, at that time I felt I'm losing my friends every year. But now I think it has made me more flexible as a person, flexible to moving new places. It has also made me a more social person. I'm comfortable meeting new people. Getting along with people is easier for me because I have done that my entire life.
All right. Your subject, or you have been a student of history of the USA. Can you tell me something about the Boston Tea Party?
Yes, sir. Sir, Boston Tea Party was a very important event because it was one of the most important events that led to the American War of Independence. The Stamp Act of 1665 being the first one, and Boston Tea Party was in 1773 being the second. A Tea Act was passed by the British government. Then, if I'm remembering correctly, it was King George the Sixth, perhaps, and he passed this law where all the tea that was being brought from the British East India Company must be taxed before it comes to the American colonies. So when this tea came to Boston, there were a group of people called there was a group of people called the Sons of Liberty who boarded the ship and wasted a lot of threw all the tea from the
Dumped.
dumped all their tea.
How many crates?
Sir, perhaps it was 43 crates that were dumped into the sea at the time.
How many?
43, sir?
All
More
right.
than that.
Many more.
Never mind.
So 43 is
Go ahead. Okay.
more crates were dumped into the in the sea, and because of that, the Britain adopted harsh policies against the colonies, which were called the Intolerable Acts, that further led to the American War of Independence.
Right. Another question relating to Gwadar. What is the importance of Gwadar for Pakistan?
Yes, sir. Sir, Gwadar is important to Pakistan for a multitude of reasons. First is its geostrategic importance. So it is very importantly placed very close to the Strait of Hormuz, which is a choke point that through which 24% of the world oil passes. So the second importance of it is one of the biggest deep water ports in the world. Thirdly, sir, Pakistan has been suffering economically for some time now, and this is Pakistan's way to get connected to a lot of landlocked countries, to give them access and get transit fees, such as Afghanistan is a landlocked country that we can give access to. Similarly, the Central Asian republics, which are all landlocked, can gain access to the Indian Ocean through Gwadar. Similarly, sir, Pakistan has also gained significant diplomatic clout because of Gwadar. Because after the China-Pakistan economic corridor and China gaining access to the Indian Ocean and overcoming its Malacca dilemma, Pakistan has become a central player in the Indian Ocean because of its trade route.
All right. This CPAC, the road which starts from Gwadar, where does it end all the way to?
Sir, it passes from Gilgit-Baltistan and into the Kashmir region or Xinjiang region of China.
Right. Again, what is Joe Biden, President of the USA? What is the impact of his policy on Pakistan's foreign policy?
Yes. Sir, he joined office in January of 2020.
Yes.
And it has been a few months, and it is a dynamic, ever-changing thing. So it is not very easy to predict how it will unfold. However, there are some policies that are common, as Joe Biden has served 8 years under the presidency of President Obama. So if we look at that, it is very easy to predict that there is going to be interference in Pakistan's foreign policy, as was done previously as well. But Pakistan has a very important role to play in relation to the Afghan peace process. And if Pakistan takes charge of that, I think Pakistan can gain the driving seat with China, with the United States in this regard.
Right. My next question is, what do you understand by poverty, and what measures can be taken to eradicate poverty from Pakistan? Briefly, tell me.
Yes, sir. Sir, in a 2015.
I mean, what is poverty? What do you understand by poverty?
Sir, I think poverty is a very subjective thing. It differs from country to country and region to region. Even within a certain country, I believe, sir, poverty is very different in a rural setting as opposed to.
Let's restrict ourselves to the UN definition of poverty.
Yes, sir. Sir, in 2015, World Bank gave the international poverty line, and every person who does not earn up to $1.9 was to be living under the poverty line and cannot
Right.
make the basic ends meet. So that is the.
And then the second part of my question, what measures can be taken to eradicate poverty from our country?
Sir, there are so many contributory factors to poverty that if we view one in isolation, I don't think much will improve. So all variables that are at play contributing to poverty needs to be addressed simultaneously. So improving education, giving them skills, improving healthcare in the country, and also social uplifting, creating awareness, all needs to be worked side by side in order to uplift the people.
Right. My last question would be, what do you understand by women empowerment?
Sir, women empowerment has significantly changed over the last couple of decades. So, till 1920, women empowerment revolved around the suffrage or right to vote. But since then, we have come a long way. So now, women empowerment means different things for different people. Women empowerment is now an all-encompassing term where it is not only talking about eradicating gender-based violence, it is talking about education for women, healthcare decisions that women can take themselves. It is also talking about media portrayal of women, gender, sexist language. So it is an all-encompassing term where women are addressing all the issues that they face in daily life, in work life, and in personal life.
Right. That's all from my side.
Okay, now one last question, parting question from my side. We talked about education in the context of poverty. Would you agree that instead of laying emphasis on school and college education, the government should shift its emphasis on vocational training and vocational education so that youngsters, young boys and girls get trained and they find better job opportunities?
Sir, I partially agree with it. I think it is very important that we move towards a scale-based economy because with more and more through CPEC and through all the special economic zones that are coming in the country, it is important that the youth is skilled enough to actually work. However, sir, I don't think it is an alternate to education. It is important for a child to be learned as well. They should know how to read, write. And in addition to this, it is important to have a skill as well that can get them an earning as well.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, now that the interview is over and the candidate has left, let's analyze. What are your views about her?
I think overall she performed well. I was impressed by her personality, her excellent communication skills, and above all by her unflappable approach in dealing with the questions. She almost answered most of the questions, but in certain areas she is lacking, especially in US history, where she needs to focus more. And similarly, on some occasions she speaks very fast, which she needs to control. But overall, I think she has a very bright chances, and most probably she must be in the list. Thank you.
I think she appears to be a good candidate. She portrayed a lot of confidence and she spoke very well. She has a good dynamic personality also. She remained composed and she has adequate knowledge as far as her subjects are concerned and overall general knowledge. If we rate her in percentage, I think she should be around 75% and she appears to be a very good candidate.
Would you think that she would be a fit candidate to join the Foreign Service?
I think that should be, if that is her first choice, I think that should be the first choice of the Commission also.
Ashraf sir, your views?
Jeez. I think she did very well. She's intelligent, her general knowledge is good, she has a good command of English, and she's confident, she spoke very well, she was able to discuss issues confidently, although as my fellow colleague mentioned that she speaks a bit too fast. She needs to check herself on that. Otherwise, overall, I would give her 80 marks.
All right, thank you. I agree with you, with two of you, when you say that she spoke a bit too fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. She should tone it down. Speak at a moderate, deliberate pace.
Right.
And then maybe you noticed or not, but I did, that at least during the first half of the interview, she felt under stress. That also accounted for the fact that she was trying to speak too fast. Nevertheless, she was composed, confident, answered to a great extent all of her questions more or less correctly. Although there was I felt that there should have been a little bit more improvement on the facts, dates and figures. There she was a bit lacking. Otherwise, overall, a very good candidate. I will agree with you that she deserves 75-80% marks. Thank you.